Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting of the Finance Committee to order, please. David, are there any public speakers?
Yes, sir. We have two public speakers today. The first speaker is Murray Bowden, who will be followed by Jason Pinero.
Thank you, my friend.
Finance Committee, that's where you decide about money, right, Larry? Henry Hudson Bridge, they were very creative and they took the speed limits off and traffic went faster. When 60 Minutes the other day, when Andy showed the switches that go back and forth, the mechanical switches that you can't get parts for and they manufacture, that's pretty much what PTC is. An outdated system, and nobody can say stop, and you're spending multi-millions of dollars on an outdated system. This morning, Chuck asked about the 3 railroad accidents where a train ran into a car on the straight. Your PTC will not stop the train for that. The Mobile Eye I have on my car would stop the train for that. Chuck, you said that, right? So what's the answer? You keep spending millions of dollars on a system that's outdated, and you have to manufacture the parts for it because they're not made anymore, same as you showed on the 60 Minutes. Different switch, outdated system. Mitch is responsible for Long Island. You're supposed to stop and get rid of the red lights and the traffic lights at the same crossing, and you can't do it. So if you can't do it, who's supposed to do it? I can't do it, certainly. Go out, turn your mic on, because I can't hear you. You can't remember to turn your mic on. You can't get rid of the traffic lights. What are you doing here? It's time to get off the board. We can't afford you. I know you're smiling and you're embarrassed, but you should be embarrassed because you didn't solve the problem. Who's going to solve the problem? Me? I'm going to die soon. I haven't got much time to waiting for this. You asked about the contracts on Metro North. Take it. We'll get it done in a year.
Mr. Bowden, please conclude your remarks. Thank you.
Who said that? Okay. You got my point. Time's running short, fellas. You started getting contracts done in weeks and not years. They want a year to do a contract. That's over.
Mr. Bowden, please conclude your remarks. Thank you.
I just want to say I won't be here many more times because I'm getting old and I'll probably collapse one of these days. There are a lot of good people working around here. I wish you all well. New York and New Jersey is one unit, not competing anymore. Work together and solve
Mr. Bowden,
those
please conclude your remarks. Thank you.
I'm going home, fellas. It's all up to you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden. Our second and final speaker is Jason Pinero.
Sorry about that. Good afternoon, Larry. Good afternoon, Robert Ferran. I'm going to make one single point, and that is, since that H.B. Schroeder is not here, why not let's allocate funds to create a system-wide Veterans discount? We know that Veterans Day is around the corner on November 11th, but why not allocate some funds and give a discount that they deserve? They serve our country proudly. Why not give them a discount system-wide? I know that Long Island Railroad gives discounts to them, but only off-peak. I don't know if Metro North has the same. New York City Transit doesn't have it. So since that, Robert Ferran, you're the Chief Financial Officer of the MTA, let's try to see if we could find some funds and create these veterans discounts. Because H.B. Schroeder is advocating for this. I'm going to do it in his honor also. So let's keep the veterans in mind, shall we? And let's keep doing the work that we should be doing.
Thank you, Mr. Pinero. Mr. Chairman, this concludes the public speaker portion.
Thank you, David. Next, we have the approval of the September 24th minutes. May I please have a motion? Second. All those in favor say aye. Any noes? Motion, minutes are approved. David, can you take us through the work plan, please?
Mr. Chairman, there are no changes to the work plan, and then the following item is on the agenda is Budget Watch. This month's Budget Watch focuses on September preliminary results and subsidy cash results through October, and these results are measured against the mid-year forecast in the July plan, where revenue estimates were taken down and expenses were increased from the February plan. Starting with operating results, passenger revenues were on target in September with the unfavorable year-to-date variance at $12 million. In September, favorable results for Subway and New York City Transit Bus were offset by unfavorable results at Metro North, the Long Island Railroad, and MTA Bus. Year-to-date results continue to reflect unfavorable passenger revenue for Subway, the LIRR, and Metro North, which are partially offset by favorable results for New York City Transit Bus and MTA Bus. Toll revenue was unfavorable for September by $1.5 million, the result of lower than anticipated average toll, reducing the year-to-date favorable variance to $7.5 million. Last month, information on recent ridership trends was requested. In response, beginning on the 9th page of the Budget Watch document, we have added several graphs. For Subway, New York City Transit Bus, and MTA Bus, 2 graphs are presented for each operation. The first graph provides average weekday, average Saturday, and average Sunday ridership, and in the second graph is provided average weekday ridership by time of day. There is a single graph for Long Island Railroad and Metro North providing average weekday and average weekend ridership, while the graph for Staten Island Railway provides average weekday, average Saturday, and average Sunday ridership. Preliminary expenses for September were on target, with year-to-date expenses favorable by $111 million. Vacancy savings, EasyPass customer service center efficiency savings, and higher overhead reimbursements from capital project activity, along with timing impacts at all agencies, were partially offset by higher overtime. Debt service costs were favorable for September and year-to-date due to savings from refunding transactions and lower than budgeted variable rates. Moving to subsidies, total subsidies in October were unfavorable by $3 million. For October, the petroleum business tax was $3 million favorable, and the payroll mobility tax was $1.5 million favorable, while the mortgage recording tax was unfavorable by $7.6 million. Other subsidies were on target for the month. Year-to-date through October, subsidies were $4 million favorable. However, included in this variance are timing impacts for MTA aid and payroll mobility tax. Adjusting for these timing issues, which are expected to clear up by the end of the year, total year-to-date subsidies would be $27 million favorable. Overall, year-to-date results were favorable due to expense and subsidy timing issues, although reversal of timing-related variances for expenses will offset some of the favorable results. However, the continued unfavorable variances for Subway and commuter railroad passenger revenues remain a concern and are being evaluated as the November plan is being developed. And that concludes Budget Watch. The next item on the agenda is Finance Watch, and Marcia Tanian is here.
Good afternoon, everyone. Finance Watch begins on page 20. I just want to highlight a few things. The variable rate bonds that are listed 2001B and 2018D, Pat discussed those last month, so I won't discuss those. But our bans, we recently had a $900 million ban transaction that closed in October 10th. And it was a competitive sale. $450 million was matured September 1st, 2020, and $450 million September 1st, 2021. It was highly competitive. We had 8 successful bids, but on each tranche we had about 100 bids on one and 70 bids on the other. So it was a highly successful transaction, and that, of course, goes for transit and commuter projects and the approved capital programs. We also have some remarketings that are coming up, and I won't go into details because Pat will report on those in November, but we do have an LOC substitution for a daily VRDB, as well as an FRN transaction that is pricing this week. Again, we'll have more details on that in November. Happy to take any questions on Finance Watch. Sure.
Yeah, I saw in the controller's report a fairly large section on the whole question of the vulnerability of the MTA on its various bonds. Could we as a board have some sense of a response, to those concerns?
I have to admit, I don't know verbatim what was
Okay.
said,
Well,
but
I think
if-
they were raising questions, some of them I've been concerned with, that in the event of a financial reverse, that we could find ourselves in a difficult position in terms of debt service coverage.
I'm sorry.
I was talking about, the controller's report spent a couple of pages on the issue of the vulnerability of the MTA
Yes.
in terms of its debt service. And I don't know why or wherefore, but I was wondering if we could have some kind of response for the board and the public of how we see the picture.
Certainly. The controller used the information that we provided, and so his facts are accurate. As you project our financial results going out, the numbers that he's showing are the same ones that we presented. So it looks like by 2022, debt service as a percentage of total revenues are about 19%.
Yeah.
And so roughly 17% now going up. And I would point out that that's typically the same pattern that we've been seeing, you know, because we're conservative in our estimates. However, I will say the challenge is funding this major capital program.
Right.
And to the extent that we're funding it with debt, increasingly with debt, that is going to be a challenge we're going to have to address, because we certainly are trying to avoid putting pressure on the fare box because of the debt service.
Well, it's also, the city of New York is capped at 15% in terms, it can't go beyond that in terms of its expense budget, in terms of covering debt service. We're inching pretty far above that, and obviously going into an uncertain future. It does give us concern that, you know, we're going to have to make trade-offs between actual delivery of service and covering debt. So, but I think we've okay.
Yes.
You've answered it.
Okay, no further questions. Next for headquarters, we have 3 reports and information items. The first item is a presentation by Marcia Tanian on the annual review of MTA's derivative portfolio, including the hedge fund. It is available on Director's Desk, the exhibit book, and on the MTA website at mta.info.
Okay, thank you again. And I'm just going to go through a few of these slides just to highlight some of the information. So the derivatives program and the fuel hedging program are both to reduce risk using the interest rate swaps and the fuel hedging strategies. And we currently have about 2.3 billion notional outstanding with this on the synthetic fixed rate portfolio with 8 counterparties, and I'll go point out those counterparties in just a moment. And these are all historical. They were executed between 2001 and 2007, so no new ones have been put in place. The weighted average synthetic fixed rate is about 4.12%, which is still competitive with a traditional fixed rate, the fixed rate that we would get on our portfolio. And just overall on the fuel hedging program, again, it's to help Bob and David as they're working on the financial plan and to be able to budget for 50% of that fuel. We have 24 hedges with 5 counterparties. The final maturity is 2020, and the goal is to hedge 50% over the next 12 months, and then there's a declining hedge as you go to the 24th month. I'm going to kind of skip through this a little bit, and if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to take them. But just wanted to note that the counterparties, we do have some strong counterparties on those swaps, and we do, look for novations. We have a great financial advisor, Mohanty Gargiulo, who helps us with the derivative portfolio and are a foremost expert in that field, and certainly are working with us as we go through that. On the fuel hedging program, you can see we have the 5 counterparties. J. Aaron and Company currently is our largest counterparty on that. And just wanted to emphasize on what I meant by the 50% hedge. You can see the 50% hedge for the next 12 months, and then it declines to 4% hedged in that last 24th month. And again, it's for budget stability. It's to help with the spikes in gas rates. So if you look, it's a little hard to see probably on the screen, but if you look, the blue line is the actual unhedged fuel price paid, and the green solid line is the actual fuel price paid, including charges and hedges. And then the green dotted line is the hedged price. So in 2016, we did not get the benefit from it. But as you come into 2017 and 2018, when the actual price did spike up, the hedged price worked to our benefit in that case. And so that's the goal, again, for Bob and for David as they're building into the financial plan, just some budget stability. And we have an appendix with some details, and I'm happy to take any questions.
What's the cost of the hedges?
The average cost of the hedge right now for the 12-month is $1.81 per gallon.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Okay, you go ahead. The next item for your information is the MTA's 2018 Semi-Annual Investment Report, and Joseanne Codio is here to take any questions. Okay, so moving along, the last item is the 2019 Preliminary Budget July Financial Plan 2019 to 2022, which is included in the agenda both in September and this month to provide the public the opportunity to address any issues associated with our July financial plan. Next, we have David Ross with procurements for headquarters in the agencies. David?
Thank you, David. For headquarters, there are 11 procurement actions totaling $20,735,242. There are 4 non-competitive actions with preferred source vendors. One is with Corecraft for various furniture in the amount of $950,000. The other 3 are modifications to existing contracts with New York State Industries for the disabled for janitorial and window cleaning services for the LIRR, Metro North, and New York City Transit in the amount of $11.8 million. There are 6 competitive actions for a total amount of $6.5 million. 3 are 5-year contracts with electricity suppliers to support Metro North operations in Connecticut. You'll recall we had a like action in a previous month for other of our territories. Services will be awarded through mini bids. The other 3 actions are modifications to bridge services until new replacement contracts start. There's 1 procurement action for ratification of an award by New York City Transit pursuant to Executive Order 168 for a total of $1.5 million. This action completes signal voltage work that was started by Con Ed in 2017.
Questions? We need a motion. Second. Vote. Well, I'm sorry.
Question about the Miller Advertising Agency procurement. Is that for all components of the MTA, or is that just for New York City Transit?
It's an all agency. Mark, do you want to talk about who that serves?
That is an all-agency procurement. Miller provides classified, legal, and recruitment advertising for all MTA agencies.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All those in favor? I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Ira.
I'm sorry, just briefly on the LK Comstock, the emergency order procurement. I think that's in regards to the Rockaways, and it's to acquire equipment we're going to install in Rockaway, similar to what Con Ed did. But my question about this is really more, how could we have done this through our regular procurement process, and if not, how, I can take it offline later, is how should we change our procurement process in order to be able to do this without an emergency order? I don't know if anyone wants to answer that now or answer. It can answer it later, but I think that's.
I can address
Okay.
it now if you'd
Sure.
like. One, we took advantage of the fact that Comstock was actually mobilized and doing this, excuse me, at significant locations within its jurisdiction. So in order to react immediately to it, we took advantage of the fact that EO 168 allowed, particularly for Public Works, the opportunity to go out and award this particular contract. We did it as a supplemental agreement to an existing Comstock contract where we already had terms and conditions negotiated which were favorable to us, so we leveraged that as well. and we also took advantage of the pricing that Con Ed had gotten from Con Ed from many, many more locations. So it was the swiftest way to do it.
Should we be able to piggyback onto Con Ed contracts in the future? Would that help us in any way, or something like? I'm just asking if there's some.
I don't think so. Not in, this is
Okay.
a particular unique
Yeah, I know this. We
circumstance.
don't see it much. Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Thank.
Any other board member have any questions? No. All those in favor? Any nays?
Okay, there are no items for Metro North. For Long Island Railroad, there are 3 procurement actions totaling about $35.4 million. There's 1 competitive action for Long Island Railroad and Metro North for $7.25 million with Ronald E. Dowdy to obtain a license for low-frequency bandwidth for wireless radio communications. Long Island Railroad is proposing to award 5-year contracts to 15 firms for a total of $25 million for scheduled and emergency bus services. And last for Long Island Railroad is a procurement action for ratification of contract extensions with 6 firms for rubbish removal and on-call container services in the amount of $3.2 million.
Any questions?
We'll just say, Larry, that we had a lengthy discussion about the rubbish removal contract at the Metro North Long Island Committee, and Phil Ang is going to provide the committee with additional information as to the appropriateness of the funding package as to why it was done. So, but the committee recommended its approval by the committee and by finance, and the president of the railroad providing for additional information to us next month.
Okay, great. All those in favor? I'm sorry. You have a motion? Second? All those in favor? Any nays? Motion carried.
So next is New York City Transit. There are 4 procurement actions totaling $856,081,429. New York City Transit is requesting that the board adopt a resolution authorizing an expedited change order procedure for the purchase of 535 R211 cars from Kawasaki Railcar Incorporated, similar to what was done for other railcar procurements. And New York City Transit is proposing to extend 3 paratransit contractors for the eHealth pilot program and to modify those contracts by adding call center and additional reporting capabilities. The cost of the 3 extensions with modifications is $56.1 million.
Any questions? Motion? Second? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
Next, New York City Transit is requesting that the board declare competitive bidding impractical and inappropriate for the purchase of car-borne communication-based train control equipment for R179 and R211 subway cars that will operate on the 8th Avenue Queens Boulevard line. An RFP will be conducted between the 2 pre-qualified CBTC suppliers using a streamlined acquisition strategy. The resultant purchase will equip approximately 850 cars and include maintenance of the equipment. Lastly, New York City Transit is proposing a competitive action for 8. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, if you wanna- why don't
You can finish your statement.
Sure, okay. Lastly, New York City Transit is proposing a competitive action for $800 million to award 26 contracts to 13 firms for construction management and inspection services. Each firm will receive 2 contracts, a state-funded contract and a federally funded one.
On the item about the R179 and the R211 car-borne CBTC equipment, does this imply that since the R211s are replacing the R46s, that the entire A line will be made CBTC ready?
Commissioner, effectively, yes. What we're doing is now, going forward, any new car procurement, the cars need to come CBTC equipped. A number of recent fleets have been delivered car and CBTC enabled, so the conversion is not too difficult, but it's certainly our intention now to push on and make everything CBTC compatible.
And what is the differential in price between CBTC enabled and CBTC ready or equipped?
Steve?
I can probably try and get that for you offline. I don't have that available because this is an RFP to actually do it. In other words, actually perform the installation. So we would have the equipment where we would contract directly with the actual CBTC suppliers, as opposed to typical contracts where you have the installer, which is the company that does the right-of-way work, be the prime. So we haven't gotten there yet.
But Commissioner, my professional view is it's always better to have them arrive CBTC equipped rather than try and retrofit, because in retrofitting invariably you incur more costs, but also interfering with a product that's otherwise finished, you are risking introducing regression with the cabling, etc. So get it right the first time, have them delivered CBTC enabled.
And Andy, since you brought that up, if the ultra wideband frequency test proves successful, would a CBTC equipped or ready car be usable on such trackage?
My understanding is yes, and this Friday we are going to witness Metrom's latest proof of concept. So don't forget, effectively what ultra wideband does is it complements CBTC. Which is why in the fast forward plan on page 26 we flagged that if UWB does indeed prove to be a goer, we can re-signal this whole subway potentially even quicker,
much quicker,
even cheaper, and with even less convenience. So I really hope it works, but in the meantime, just to play safe, not to put all the eggs in one basket, we're pursuing a parallel path.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Motion? Second? All right. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
Bridges and Tunnels is proposing award of a $35 million competitive design build services contract with Kiewit Infrastructure for rehabilitation of the tower pedestals, mooring platforms, and elevators at the Verrazano Narrows Bridge.
Any questions? Motion? Second? I'll second it. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
There are no actions for FEMTAX, so that concludes the procurements. David?
MTA consolidated financial and operational reports are on pages 76 to 128. And next is David Florio with real estate.
Thank you. We have 6 action items for your consideration. One for Long Island Railroad. It's a lease agreement for the retail buildings at the Ronkonkoma Station in the town of Brookhaven. 2 Metro North items, a license agreement with JANCT for employee and visitor parking in support of the Springdale Maintenance Away Facility in Stamford. Lease agreement with Central Watch to renew its lease at Grand Central Terminal. For New York City Transit, we have 2 items, a renewal of lease with Forest City Ratner for office space at 1 Pierpont Plaza in Brooklyn, and a lease agreement with Manhattan College to continue its use of athletics facilities in the Bronx. And lastly, for the MTA, we have an amendment of a lease agreement for GNC for their retail space here at 2 Broadway. Happy to answer any questions about these or the information items.
Could, on the Ronkonkoma lease issues, are we taking into account the development projects on both sides of the railroad in relation to that, under the assumption that it will not affect the areas that we lease out at the moment?
That's correct.
That's our assumption.
That's our understanding, yes.
And if they do, we'll cross that bridge when we get to that bridge.
Correct. The town's fully aware, was made aware of our RFP activity when we issued it last year.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Motion? Second? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Next, we need a motion to adjourn. Second? All those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
This meeting is now adjourned.